All right, well, welcome to week 2 in the Protestant Path Book Club. We are going to be diving right into the back part of book 1 in Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And in today's video, we're going to be covering the last 2 chapters in book 1, chapters 4 and 5. And book 1, the title is Right and Wrong as a Clue to the Meaning of the Universe. So we discussed that at pretty good length in the first video of this book club. And so I hope you found that helpful. Now, this week, we're going to continue on into chapters 4 and 5. Chapter 4, we will look at what lies behind the law. So we'll do a small recap at the beginning of this video just to kind of give us a little bit of a reminder as to what we discussed, what Lewis is putting forth in Mere Christianity as a reason to believe in a creator, that we have good reason to believe because of the moral law given, and we'll get into that. And then we'll dive into chapter 5, which will be the last chapter in book 1, and that'll conclude book 1, and then we will dive into book 2 next week, looking at Christianity as the worldview given by Lewis, clearly to be the antidote to the world's problems and the uneasy place that we find ourselves in, and that's what he titles chapter 5, We Have Cause to Be Uneasy. In way of summary, Lewis kind of recaps the first few chapters that we had been in with this statement. So I'll read this. This is from chapter 4, and this is how he starts off in chapter 4. What lies behind the law? The law of human nature, or right and wrong, must be something above and beyond the actual facts of human behavior. In this case, besides the actual facts, we have something else, a real law which we did not invent and which we know we ought to obey. So he dives right in and begins to remind us of what the human nature and human law, the moral law, are, and that we have something beyond just facts. He compares that to kind of scientific discovery of gravity and things of that nature. And then he says in this case, it's something besides that. It's a real law which we did not invent and which we ought to obey. So that's how he kind of gives a small recap as we jump into chapter 4 to conclude book 1. So he begins to discuss kind of 2 prominent worldviews as for the reason of the universe. So he's saying now we have this created order, and there's kind of 2 prominent views, and they probably have a bunch of subviews that you could dive into, but for sake of brevity, he goes into 2 prominent views. And the first one is the materialist view. This essentially is that we don't have solid answers or reasons. It doesn't answer the existential questions as to why is the universe here? Why does it exist? What's its purpose? And it doesn't even really answer how. It kind of gives its best shot at saying, we're not really sure what happened. It could be just pure coincidence that over, millions and millions of years, billions of years, there have just been molecules floating out in space, whatever that means, and they kind of collided, or there was a big bang or something collided with the sun, and just over a long period of time, things continually evolved into what we have now as Earth and human beings. And it kind of is just random, and there aren't really any good reasons for it. And so that's kind of the materialist view. And that, I think, for probably everybody that listens to this video, that will be it will not be satisfactory. That does not answer too many of the big questions that we have, that we know are real. And so then he gives the second view. The second view is the religious view, and that this world was intentionally created with a purpose by a creator, and that the creation and the creator and the creation are 2 separate things, and that the creator gives the creation the moral law. And that's exactly where he goes in chapters 4 and 5 to round out book 1. Now, Lewis gives another example here of how are the moral law that we find inside of us and this created order, how are those linked, and why should we believe or come to the conclusion that there is a creator, and that we should essentially at least have like a theistic worldview. And that's where he goes. He links these again by giving this really amazing analogy that he's just so good at these things. I could read these over and over. And so I'll try to do my best to summarize what is this abstract thought with this word picture that he gives, this analogy, this metaphor found in chapter 4. Now he gives an example here to explain his understanding of how we know the moral law exists, and our existence or reason for existence cannot be explained by the materialistic view. He gives the example of a mailman delivering small packets house to house. And he can arrive at an accurate conclusion on what is in the packets delivered to other houses in which he has never opened, but opening the packets, so he's never opened those, but he can arrive at this conclusion based on the packets that he is allowed to open that have been delivered to his house by the same man. So he concludes when opened, these packets contain letters. What he's saying is that we can know what this world is by opening man. We're allowed to open man. We have internal, inside information as to what is inside of us. And then we can conclude that the other people, they have the same thing. They have the same thing, even though we're not allowed to, we don't have the same inside information, as it were, into the other man. But what we do have is this moral law that's inside of us. And based off of that, we can know that this moral law has been delivered to us. And based on this, we arrive at the reasonable conclusion that there is a sender of letters. And that's where he kind of brings in through this metaphor. Sorry if that wasn't totally clear. That's why you should just read this book. He puts it in a way it's very clear and helpful. I'm just doing my best to articulate this. He says we can arrive at the conclusion that there's a sender of letters. And something or someone, like a mind is the language he uses, sent the moral law into the man, which we are allowed to open, which we can investigate, which we can know. And so that's what he says. It exists outside of the material world, leaving the materialist view insufficient to answer where does that come from, because it is outside of it. So then he continues into chapter 5, and this is where he begins to continually develop this train of thought, this logical progression of this moral law given. We find it internally into man, which we open and conclude that there is a sender of letters. And then once we discover that and begin to grapple with that and wrestle with that and see that, we have cause to be uneasy. That's the language he uses. That's the heading and the title of chapter 5, the last chapter in book 1. We have cause to be uneasy. As he develops the moral law, which is inside each one of us, he shows how this leads us to believing that there is a God, one who has placed it there. Lewis gives a few points. Soft. And again, here he begins to give us some analogies, and he reflects in the title of this chapter really the essence of what he's trying to get at, that we have cause to be uneasy because this God, we need him as our ally. So he's the creator. He's the one who possesses all power. He's the giver of the moral law, and we need him as our ally. And yet, as we continually dive in and open the packet, as it were, we find ourselves at odds because we fail to keep this moral law that he has put inside all of us. So here's a great quote to kind of expand on this, to go straight to the source of what Lewis is saying. He's saying, And yet we, not him, he's not at fault, but we are the ones that have gone astray. We are the ones who have gone against him. And we've reacted the wrong way to the moral law. We have failed to keep it. And I don't know about you, but that really resonates with me. And when I think about, my life and, praise God, I have salvation in the Lord Jesus Christ. I just think back to my own spiritual journey and the things that I've done, that I've said, that I've ignored, and I just think that he really cuts to the chase here and calls it for what it is, and just says we are in quite a predicament. Not just me, not just you, but humanity, because the moral law has been placed on all of our hearts, and yet we've responded and reacted in the wrong way. I can't help but think later in this quote, he talks about how people are simply or still only playing religion. Yeah, people. You sometimes will hear people say, and I've probably said this, maybe even a number of times, of, well, when I meet God, I have some questions for him. Why did he create this? Why didn't he stop that? As if we are going to be questioners of God. And I think I hear people say that, and people talk about, meeting God or experiencing God or all of these types of different things in a manner which really lacks reverence and humility. And I think that's what he's getting at, is people that are just saying, look, I'm going to kind of put God on the hot seat and ask him questions when I get up to heaven. Why didn't he stop this? How could he allow this? And I think it's a very, very dangerous thing when we become the accusers or questioners of God, remembering that we are simply created beings. And he is the one that gives us the moral law. He's the one that gives us the commands. He's never made a mistake. He has never erred. He has never had a wrong thought or an impure motive, never sinned. And so, and he's holy. He's holy, holy, holy. The only time that the scriptures use a repetition of 3 to describe who this being, this supernatural being is. And we come to think that we're going to be the questioners and the arbiters of justice. And Lewis gives strong warning against that. We're just simply playing religion. And we haven't actually dug deep to think about the things of God and who he is and what it means to have this moral law on us and unable to keep it. And so I don't know, I just think maybe there's even a practical application for us who are desiring to follow the Lord, to be slow to question God, to be slow to doubt God, but to always remember who he is. And I just give that to all of us as a point of reflection. And even when we hear people in our culture talking in this way, maybe it's something that we can slow down on and be a better example, and that we're not going to have a lot of questions for God. And I even think that maybe in the oldest book in the scriptures is the story of Job. And, for a while there, he goes on and asks questions, and fair enough. I mean, goodness gracious, the story of Job it's a very complicated, concerning, challenging book to understand totally. But there does come a point where Job begins asking questions, and God eventually steps in and says, "Where were you?" And kind of puts Job back in his place. And I wonder if some of us just would be wise to remember that. And I think Lewis is wise to point that out, that we're the ones in error. We're the ones that don't understand. We're the ones that don't see the whole picture. And so I love how he sets that up before he even begins to discuss the deeper things of the Christian God. And so I think that was a really big thing in chapter 5 that stuck out to me. But I just wanted to pass on because I know it's caused me to just think that he is our only comfort. What a great truth. He is also our supreme terror. The thing that we most need, that is the deepest need that I have, the deepest need that you have. And yet, he's the thing that we hide from. He's our only possible ally. God alone is the one who can save us, redeem us, change us, cause us to be the men or the women that he's called us to be. So I just think there's a lot in that. And so, I just kind of share that as something to reflect on. Okay, we continue as we wrap up book 1. Yeah, he wraps up book 1 with really communicating the moral law within us. It reveals that we are under a certain law of rights and wrongs, and yet we've failed to comply. We have broken the law of God, and because we've acted the wrong way, as Lewis puts it, we have every reason to believe that we are in danger. For those who are against the Lord are in danger. Just like Adam, when he realizes the very first time he is out of step with God, he realizes he flees, he runs away, and he hides in fear. And so book 1, chapter 5, it concludes with providing the reason that Lewis starts his book this way. Maybe you're thinking, okay, when are we going to get to the Christian stuff, the Christian doctrines and practical applications for the Christian life? And Lewis gives the reason that he starts this way.